Ladies and gentlemen, Baron here. Now, I'm basically going to give you an announcement on probably the most important thing on patch 1.41, and that is that the Fairey Swordfish is now able to carry 1,000 pounds in bombs. I know, right? Easily the grandest and most important announcement of all. Well, right after the fact that tanks are going to be available to everyone. So, no longer are you stuck with one giant torpedo. You now have 4 250-pound bombs. Now the Swordfish, while appearing to be relatively humble and modest, is actually a rather distinguished aircraft. It took place in the Battle of Toronto, where a number of Fairey Swordfish bombers, or excuse me, Fairey Swordfish torpedo bombers, were able to take out and disable 3 Italian battleships and a cruiser, which largely kept the Regia Marina in port for the majority of the war. It also helped disable the Bismarck. And we've got Sam on our tail. Oh, good lord. So we gotta drop our bombs here. This is a pretty cool plane, and it also, like, don't think of it as just as a torpedo or a simple bomber just able to carry bombs. This thing actually has a number of pretty cool... Boo! We got one though. Medium tank. We gotta kill these guys. We're gonna do our own little Battle of Toronto. The cool thing about the Battle of Toronto was it was a torpedo bomb in a harbor. The Japanese actually sent over some guys to kind of investigate what happened to the Italians, and then they did their own thing called Pearl Harbor, which was pretty, bad for the Americans. But the cool thing about this, as we're probably going to die right here, will we make it back? No, we're not going to make it back. We're going to get flak panzered. It's going to happen. We're on fire! We're going to be able to... Oh, that was a little harsh. But the cool thing about this plane, furthermore, is that it was used in an anti-submarine role. This thing could be armed with depth charges. So instead of torpedo or bombs, you could use depth charges. So we're going to make a run at these German destroyers. I don't know if you know this, but we're actually too high to drop our torpedo at that destroyer. I know, right? A little shocking. All these fireboats would probably eat us up. I love the barrage balloons. But I'm a big fan of kind of these derpy, what some people might consider kind of derpy planes. But the cool thing about it, like, imagine this. See that ocean, right? The whole thing about fighting submarines is, for the most part, they run on the surface. They need to recharge their batteries. Because when they're underwater, they use diesel. Or, excuse me, yeah, when they're underwater, they use battery, in most cases. And when they're on the surface, they're running diesel. That allows them to run much faster. But the thing is, to detect them, in most cases, before, like, radar and sonar, you basically did it by eye. You'd be looking around and you're like, hey, what's that little periscope thingy, or what's that weird looking ship up there? It looks like it's mostly submerged. It's a U-boat. You'd be able to see them. And then you'd fly over them. The U-boats would generally see you and then be like, oh shit, it's time to dive. And when they dove, you'd start kind of playing a little game of Battleship where you drop in depth charges and hoping to destroy the enemy U-boat. So you'd have depth charges. That's why U-boats had deck guns, where they were kind of like those dual-purpose surface and air type, smaller main deck guns, as well as some anti-aircraft guns, because that was one of the biggest threats to submarines. Destroyers were also a huge threat, because they could carry a whole lot of depth charges. But imagine, if U-boats are put in the game, I think U-boats will be very difficult to play. It's kind of going to be a labor of love. But there's a lot of people that played those games like Silent Hunter and those other World War II related U-boat games. And I think that they would be a big fan if U-boats were put into the game. I would be too, because it would increase the options, increase the depth of the game. If I was able to take my Swordfish out and I was able to use depth charges, that would be pretty awesome. Sub-hunting would be kind of fun. You could do custom battles with your friends and just kind of play around. Make submarines premium. You know, that's fine. I don't really care. Just put them in the game, please. But another cool thing that the Fairey Swordfish bombers could use were these rockets, the RP-3 rockets. These things were used both on tanks and U-boats. You have your general high explosive rockets, and you also have these things called like rocket spears, which are basically used to puncture U-boats and puncture tanks. And if you think about it, if you puncture a U-boat, you know, and you basically critically damage their ballast, they're not going to be able to dive. And if they're not able to dive, they're going to get eaten up alive in most cases. So I'm no veteran torpedo bomber, but let's watch this. Look at that. Oh man. Destroyer's going fast. And we're getting wrecked by AAA. We've got 26 seconds and then another destroyer, so I'm going to start turning around because I imagine it'll come around. So once navies are put into the game, I think U-boats are almost a necessity. Good lord. Oh, hello. Get wrecked, son. Because if they are put in, like, it just, I mean, quite frankly, here's another. World of Warships isn't going to have them. Alright. You know what? It's looking a little rough for us, guys. Oh, I wanted to try to hit the main deck of that other one. Are we going to get this destroyer? There we go. Destroyer taken down. So one last look at the Swordfish. So this is both Swordfish as well as Navy talk and especially submarine talk. But this plane, while it appears to look rather humble, it is a very slow biplane. I like that they added bombs. I would love to see depth charges and the RP-3 rockets in the future, because it would turn an otherwise relatively unused Tier 1 plane with a lot of history behind it to be very fun in some custom battles, and then just have some pretty cool weapon systems that I think all of us would like to have generally. You know, these RP-3 rockets were used by Hawker Typhoons and a number of other British attackers, both to kill tanks, armored targets, and then usage on U-boats. So it would just be great to have. Anyway, that's some fun talk about U-boats. Let me know what you think. Do you want U-boats in the game? And if you do or don't, a little reasoning as to why or why not would be pretty interesting to kind of create a debate. I'm obviously all for it for a number of reasons, including marketing reasons. Gaijin, you hear that? You put in U-boats, it's just going to be easy, free marketing, as people are raving about the fact that you're able to have U-boats, whereas World of Warships will not. At least they've publicly stated that in the past. I wonder if policy's changed. Either way. So the Fairey Swordfish now has bombs. That's some patch 1.41 coverage on the dev server. My name's Baron. I thank y'all for watching. Make sure to pull the trigger on that like button. And for the love of games, subscribe. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Baron here. We're going to be playing as the Hetzer, also known as the Jagdpanzer 38. Based off of the Czech Panzer 38T. Now, we're going to be roughly comparing it. It has the same gun as the Jagdpanzer 4, but the battle rating is 0.3 less. So that should be rather interesting. Now we got some HE rounds. We're going to want to keep HE rounds. Actually, we'll keep high explosive anti-tanks.